Greetings to all our valued listeners and viewers throughout the whole world. This is our special episode number 19, the final warning message just prior to the close of provision. I would like to begin our study reading 11 Symbolic Code. Number 6, page 19. The Lord has given us in this day an accurate and reliable blueprint in His 11th hour message, so that none of us need ear in knowing how great a privilege we have to be true witness for Him in word, in deed, and in action. Let us not therefore put off the work and thus prolong the world's sorrow and suffering, but let each of us be among those who shall fulfill the purpose for which we were created, to verily help bring about complete and true rest and everlasting joy. God has faithful ones who will do it. Will you be one of them? 11 Symbolic Code, number 6, page 19. So, concerning the 11th hour servants, God bestowed unto them reliable and accurate blueprint, or accurate and reliable blueprint. And such blueprint is but a duplicate from heaven. It says here in 1 SR 231, the wisdom and knowledge of the infinite is beyond comprehension by the finite. The wonders we behold and the events which make the history of our world are but duplicates from the blueprints in heaven. So it is only a duplicate from the blueprints in heaven. The blueprints of the plan of redemption. Reading tract number 5 on page 32, it says, the statements which must shortly come to pass. Revelation 1 verse 1. And I will show thee things which must be hereafter. Revelation 4 verse 1. Go to say that the revelation is given with the one particular object in view, of showing the things lying not behind, but ahead of John's time, with reference being made only incidentally to the past, in order to lay the necessary foundation upon which to build the future. And according to 2 Azar 191, it says, therefore, the word hereafter in Revelation chapter 4 verse 1 means from the time of the vision pointing forward to 1844. So our subject must be from October 22, 1844 onwards. But the focal point must be from hereafter, from 2021 onwards. All the occurrences in the past is employed by the scriptures only to serve as the groundwork. Tract number 5, page 34. Fulfilled prophecies are seen therefore to be employed by the scriptures only as groundwork for that part of prophecy which is yet to be fulfilled. So, while studying the groundwork, we need to focus more our attention to the particular object in view. What will happen from 2021 up to the visible coming of Jesus Christ, which is the year of Jubilee, the commencement of the millennium. To repeat again, according to the Shepherd's Rod, it says in tract number 3, page 75, the ceremonies of the first and the second fruits of grain must accordingly unfold the truth concerning the first and second fruits of humanity. So, humanity is divided only into two fruits, first fruits and second fruits. And accordingly, it was illustrated into the ceremonies of the first fruits and the ceremony of the second fruits. And that ceremony, according to tract number 3 on page 76, it says, here we see commanded the observance of 3 harvest rites. First, the ceremony of the wave sheaf at the beginning of the first harvest. Second, the ceremony of the wave globes at the close of the first harvest. Third, and the Feast of Tabernacles at the close of the second harvest. Being typical, these 2 grained harvests with their 3 literal sacraments accordingly foreshadow 2 soul harvests with 3 spiritual rites, the first of which is the first fruits with wave sheaf and wave globes. Tract number 3, page 76. If the divine principle, the word with, cannot be construed as apart, then let us distinctly separate those people who are among the first fruits and those people who are with the 144,000. So, let us now distinctly separate the wave sheaf and the wave loaves, and the first fruits. Because the shepherd's rod says, the first of which is the first fruits with wave sheep and wave loaves. So the first fruits, there must be wave sheep and there must be wave loaves. We already read in tract number 3 on page 83 saying, and by the same token of logic, tract number 3, page 83, and by the same token of logic, the wave sheep and the wave loaves must have a double application, each to the dead and to the living, together comprising the total fruits of the antitypical harvest. So the wave sheep and the wave loaves must have a double application, each to the dead and each to the living. So I would like to explain it step by step. First, there are only two ways by which we will obtain everlasting life. It is either by resurrection or either by translation. The four beasts in Revelation chapter 4 represent four classes of redeemed according to SR page 195. The number 4 shows that there are four classes of saints to be considered in the judgment. Two of these classes are to be resurrected, namely those who died naturally and those who were martyred. The other two are they who shall be translated at the coming of Christ, namely the 144,000 of Revelation 7 verse 1 to 8 and the great multitude with palms in their hands as shown in verse 9. Therefore, we can easily understand that the four beasts represents the representatives in the judicial proceedings in the heavenly sanctuary. And that is Abel, Moses, Elijah, and Enoch. Moses represents the saints who died in natural death. Abel is the representative of those who were martyred for their faith. Elijah represents the 144,000 living saints, spiritual Israel, the first fruits of the living. And Enoch represents the great multitude. And all of them are types. Typical Moses, typical Abel, typical Elijah, and typical Enoch. Now, in Revelation 11, verses 1 and 2, as we stated before, there are four classes of saints mentioned in Revelation 11, verse 1 and 2. Temple, altar, worshippers, and the court. The temple, they are those who died under the first 5 seals. First seal, second seal, third seal, fourth seal, fifth seal. They are the temple. The altar, those who will die under the 6th seal since 1844. The last seal that pertains to the dead. I am explaining tract number 5, 109 and 110. Temple and the altar, both of them are inanimate objects, pointing to the two classes of dead saints. The temple are those who died under the first 5 seals. The altar, those who will die under the 6th seal. And the worshippers represents the 144,000 living saints, spiritual Israel. And the court is the great multitude, which no man could number. Unlimited. Now, we know that in the resurrection of Jesus Christ, there are some saints that had been resurrected. I would like to read early writings, 184. It says, when Jesus, as he hung upon the cross, cried out, "It is finished," the rocks rent, the earth shook, and some of the graves were opened. When he arose, a victor over death and the grave, while the earth was reeling, and the glory of heaven shone around the sacred spot, many of the righteous dead, obedient to his call, came forth as witnesses that he had risen. Those favored rising saints came forth glorified. They were chosen and holy ones of every age from creation down even to the days of Christ. Early writings, page 184. So, they were chosen and holy ones selected from the first seal, from the second seal, and from the third seal. Why 3? Because they are representatives of the 3 classes of saints to be measured in the holy place. Who are they? Temple, altar, and worshippers. So some of them are representative to the temple, some of them are representative to the altar, some of them are representative to the worshiper. Why is it that there was no representative in this instance to the great multitude? Because they were not included in the numerical illustration, because they were unnumbered, unlimited, not numbered. There is no numerical illustration given to the great multitude in this instance. You remember our reading? Numerical illustration of the ingathering of the saints in tract number 3, 1934 edition, page 67. And how many grains? Only 2. Barley and wheat. So our study is closely connected also to Revelation 6 verse 6 and also Ezekiel chapter 4. In Ezekiel chapter 4, It must be only pointing to the first two grains, wheat and barley. I would like to read again to SR page 222. It says, wheat and barley, each for a penny. In our study of the seven seals, we reserved for future explanation of the following scripture. And I heard a voice in the midst of the four beasts say, a measure of wheat for a penny, and 3 measures of barley for a penny. Revelation 6 verse 6. Again, we turn the reader's attention to the fact that the voice came from the throne. See chapter 5 verse 11. Therefore, the price of the cereals is fixed by the great judge. There must be something of great importance in these symbols, for the great Jehovah himself is speaking. So, Revelation 6 verse 6, although we explained several times that it represents the Bible. Chapter 6 and verse 6, 66 books in the Bible. That in that illustration reveals the entire plan of redemption. Revelation 6 verse 6. Now, I would like to read again tract number 3 on page 75, saying, the ceremonies of the first and the second fruits of grain must accordingly unfold the truth concerning the first and second fruits of humanity. Now, those that had been resurrected on the first advent of Jesus Christ represented only by barley and wheat. Barley represents the first of the first fruits. Wheat represents the first fruits. So, those resurrected saints on the first advent of Jesus Christ are divided only into two classes. First of the first fruits and the first fruits. But divided into 3 representation. The first of the first fruits under the first seal, and the first fruit under the first seal, the first of the first fruits under the second seal, and the first fruit under the second seal, first of the first fruits under the third seal, and the first fruit under the third seal. And these 3 is a demonstration or illustration of the 3 saints mentioned in Revelation 11 verse 1. The temple, altar, and worshippers. So, let us now distinctly separate the representative of the temple, the representative of the altar, and the representative of the worshippers. 3. Number 3 is one of the biblical numbers to ascertain scriptural truth. I would like to read 1 SR 232. By all Bible students, numbers 3 and 7 are accepted to be the biblical numbers to ascertain scriptural truths. 1 SR page 232. Remember, according to tract number 3, page 80. From these facts, it can more clearly be seen that those whom Christ took with him were the living wave ship and the only one that has been offered in the heavenly sanctuary. So don't forget that statement. The only one that has been offered in the heavenly sanctuary. Who are they? Those that had been resurrected on the first advent of Jesus Christ. So, the sanctuary service in the heavenly sanctuary, of course, it was illustrated in the sanctuary service on the earthly sanctuary. And that is why in Desire of Ages, it says, all the ceremonies, Desire of Ages, page 77, all the ceremonies of the feast were types of the work of Christ. Desire of Ages, page 77. It did not say part of the ceremonies. No. All the ceremonies are types of the work of Christ in the heavenly sanctuary. So let us focus now to the first harvest rites. Let us read tract number 3, page 76. Here we see commanded the observance of 3 harvest rites. And let us elaborate them one by one. First, the ceremony of the wave ship at the beginning of the first harvest. So, what ceremony? The ceremony of the wave ship at the beginning of the first harvest. So let us focus now to the wave ship, the first ceremony. And that is the beginning, the ceremony at the beginning of the first harvest. It's very important to have a clear vision concerning these ceremonies. And do not forget, concerning the 144,000, they were sealed at the beginning of the harvest. Right? Tract number 5, page 74. And, of course, the 144,000 is the first harvest. So we need to understand the ceremony of the wave ship at the beginning of the first harvest. Let's read tract number 3, page 78. It says, the wave ship was to be offered on the morrow after the Sabbath. That is on the first day of the week, now commonly called Sunday. This offering was to be presented not on a special day of the month, but rather on a special day of the week. before the sickle was put to the grain and gathered into sheaves. Leviticus 23 verse 11 to 14. Now, what is the ceremony of the wave sheaf? No, it is not a special day of the month, but rather a special day of the week. Why? Because it will always fall on Sunday, regardless of the date. Now here, it's very important to have a clear understanding concerning the Bible creation calendar. There are 7 different dates of the offering of the wave sheaf. 7 different dates, but all of them fall on Sunday. And that is the reason why the shepherd's rod says that the offering of the wave sheaf, no, it is not a special day of the month. Because if it is a special day of the month, it must be always the same date. It is not a special day of the month, but rather a special day of the week. Always fall on Sunday, the first day of the week. Do not forget that verse, Leviticus 23:11 and verse 11 and verse 14. Because in reality, that verse, the direct application is in the judgment that pertains to the living, not to the dead. Why? Now let us focus first to the dead. When was Jesus Christ was resurrected? It is a broad and deep subject, brothers and sisters, but we will only focus every now and then from one point, then on the next episode, another point. Because I remember the statement in tract number 3, inextricably bound up together. And I love so much that reading. It says, tract number 3, page 75, illustrating our salvation in completeness. You see, in completeness, the harvest rights. How many harvest rights? 3. 3 harvest rights. Those that had been resurrected at the first advent of Jesus Christ, selected how many generation? 3. The generation under the first seal, the generation under the second seal, the generation under the third seal. Right? Both of them dead and living. Enoch, translated to heaven without seeing death. He is under the generation of the first seal. Elijah, translated to heaven without seeing death. He is under the generation under the third seal. Why is it that Enoch is in the first seal and Elijah is in the third seal? There must be an accurate and absolute significance. So in the first 3 seals, God gathered all the representatives in the judicial proceedings in the heavenly sanctuary. The translated and the resurrected. Now, let's read again the statement here. Tract number 3, page 75. Illustrating our salvation in completeness, the harvest rites of the ceremonial system must therefore corroborate both the testimonies of the prophets and the parables concerning the harvest, for all are inextricably bound up together. You see, our salvation, the plan of redemption, the plan of salvation had been illustrated by God in completeness by these 3 ceremonial harvest rites. And we need to be very careful because it says here in tract number 3, page 78, care therefore must be exercised not to confuse the one truth with the other. Tract number 3, page 78, care therefore must be exercised not to confuse the one truth with the other. So we need to employ extra care so that we would not be mixed up and the result will bring only to confusion. So let us focus our attention to the wave sheaf first before we will go to the wave lobes. And here let us distinctly separate the wave sheaf that pertains to the temple, the wave sheaf that pertains to the altar, the wave sheaf that pertains to the worshippers. In these 3 generation, first seal, second, third, represent the wave sheaf of the temple, the wave sheaf of the altar, and the wave sheaf of the worshippers. Who are they? Represented by the 144,000 living saints. First, in the 4 beasts, it must be Elijah, right? Elijah represents the 144,000 living saints, spiritual Israel. Now, since the shepherd's rod plainly told us in tract number 3, page 83, saying, and by the same token of logic, the wave sheaf and the wave lobes must have a double application, each to the dead and to the living, together comprising the total fruits of the antitypical harvest. Each to the dead and each to the living. But concerning the dead saints, it was only divided into 2, temple and altar. Let's read tract number 5 on page 109. The temple and the altar, inanimate objects, must characterize two classes of inanimate saints, two classes of dead saints. So the two classes of dead saints in this instance was illustrated by the temple and the altar, the two inanimate objects. So since the wave ship and the wave lobes must have a double application, each to the dead. Let us focus first to the dead. The wave ship to the temple, the wave lobes to the temple. Then the wave ship to the altar and the wave lobes to the altar. Then we will proceed to the wave ship to the living saints. Who are they? The wave ship to the first fruits. Who are they? The wave lobes to the first fruits. Who are they? The wave ship to the second fruits. And who are they? The wave lobes to the second fruits. Because that is the statement. It's to the dead and it's to the living. There are two classes of dead saints. There are two classes of living saints. The wave ship and the wave lobes must have a double application. It's to the dead and it's to the living. But, brothers and sisters, the offering takes place in the heavenly sanctuary, not on earth. And the voice of inspiration says, the word hereafter point forward to 1844, to SR page 191. So, we need now to focus our attention from October 22, 1844 onwards, down to the time when the judicial tribunal vacate the heavenly sanctuary. Let us go back to the wave ship. When does the wave ship will be offered? On the first day of the week. So that is, let us make a divine principle. Offering of the wave ship. When the wave ship will be offered, it must be offered on the first day of the week. First day of the week. And that is Sunday. According to the shepherd's rod. It is not a special day of the month, but rather, it is a special day of the week. There is no other day by which the wave ship must be offered. Only Sunday. So, that is very plain, right? That is only on Sunday. Here's a statement that I would like to read. On 13 Symbolic Code 5 and 6, page 23. It says, take next the wave ship, which is typical of the resurrection of Christ, having to be offered during the Passover week, and no other day but on the morrow after the Sabbath, on the first day of the week. When would be the wave ship will be offered? During the Passover week. So that is the second divine principle. The wave ship must be offered during the Passover week. We know the Passover week contains 7 days. That is from April 15 to April 21. Is there any specific date of the offering of the wave ship during the Passover week? No, there was no specific date because the date changes. But there is a specific day. What day? Sunday. Now, I would like to read 3 Symbolic Code 8 to 10, page 11. 3 Symbolic Code 8 to 10, page 11. Now, the only disagreement between the shepherd's rod and the desire of ages on this subject is that the desire of ages says that on the second day of the feast, the first fruits of the year's harvest, a sheaf of barley, was presented before the Lord. The desire of ages, page 77, which places the first feast of the Passover on the Sabbath, Numbers 28, verse 17. Thus making the slaying of the lamb on the 14th day is Exodus 12, verse 6, fall on Friday, whereas the shepherd's rod places the slaying of the lamb on the 14th day on Wednesday, the first feast on Thursday, and the second feast on Friday, and so on. Therefore, in view of the fact that the shepherd's rod and the desire of ages are here at variance, and that we believe both to be inspired, we must necessarily go to the Bible to prove which is the correct day and how to harmonize the two volumes, thus laying aside both the shepherd's rod and the desire of ages. Now, brothers and sisters, both of them were inspired by the same spirit of inspiration. Therefore, there is no possibility that they will be in contradiction. The only reason that Brother Hotep had not been able to reconcile the issue involved is that it was not present truth in their days. I always borrowed that statement in 1SR, page 13. The answer we give is because it was not present truth in their time. 1SR, page 13. Now let us focus first to the Passover week in the days of Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ was resurrected on April 18, the 4th day of the feast. according to the shepherd's rod, not on the second day. Therefore, the divine principle must be, the worship must be offered the first Sunday after, or the first Sunday during the Passover week. Now, for example, the Passover week in the days of Jesus Christ commence on Thursday. I would like to establish first. The Passover week will always commence on April 15, regardless of the day. The Passover week will always commence on April 15. So that is the divine principle. April 14 is not the Passover week. It is the Passover day. For example, let us read here in the old symbolic code. One symbolic code number 6, page 7. It says, I'd rather read 2SR before that statement. Here in 2SR, page where Bitihotep enumerated, page 23, it says, 2SR page 23, the 14th day of the first month that year, 31 AD, that is on the first advent of Jesus Christ. The 14th day of the first month that year was on Wednesday, and the day ended at sunset even. The first day of the Passover feast, 15th day of the month. So the first day of the Passover feast, that is 15th day of the month. And on that year came on Thursday. But the fact is that not April 15 every year is Thursday. And that is why it's very important to understand the Bible pattern calendar. Now it says here, the first day of the Passover feast, 15th day of the month, came on Thursday. The second on Friday. The third on Saturday, Sabbath. The fourth on Sunday. So Jesus Christ was resurrected on the fourth day of the feast. So the divine principle is that the Passover week must begin always on the 15th day of the month. And from the 15th day, the first Sunday, that is the day by which the sheep will be offered or waved before the Lord. And on the year of Christ's resurrection, that is pattern number 6, by which the wave sheep is presented before the Lord on the 4th day of the feast. That is April 18. Because April 18 is the 4th day of the feast. Now, let us read tract number 3. Tract number 3, page 78 and page 79. Coming just at the right time, in the season of the first fruit, the Passover week was the period in which the wave sheep was usually offered before the Lord. Its ritual prophetically projecting Christ, the antitype of the wave sheep. Now, in this study, let us apply threefold typification. God's law of type. I would like to read to you tract number 9. Tract number 9 on page 72. A threefold typification in threefold accord with God's law of type, that where there is type, there must also be antitype. But it says threefold typification. And that threefold typification, I would like to read in tract number 3, third edition. It says, page 97, the first being the type, the second the prototype, the third the antitype. So, the first is the type, the second is the prototype, and the third is the antitype. So, that is the threefold typification. First, type, second, prototype, third, antitype. And let us apply that in humanity. Who are they the type? In humanity. And who are they? The prototype. And who are they? The antitype. So, let us proceed. Now, let us begin now in October 22, 1844. Let's read the old symbolic code. Brethren, this subject is very important and very precious. But the mere fact that the voice of inspiration admonishes us that extra care should be exercised because it is inextricably bound up together. That the possibility of being mixed up result only to confusion. First, let us distinctly separate the occurrence that takes place in heaven and the occurrence that takes place on earth. And the only occurrence that takes place on earth is in the judgment that pertains to the living. Because when it pertains to the dead, purely bookwork transaction. Only in the judgment that pertains to the living that both sanctuary are thus affected. Meaning, in the judgment that pertains to the living, there is a judicial proceedings in the heavenly sanctuary. There is also judicial proceedings on the earth. And that's what it means, that the judicial activities in the heavenly sanctuary is extended to the earthly sanctuary. When? At the beginning of the judgment of the living. I would like to read tract number 3, page 47 and page 48. It says, inescapably, therefore, the Lord's coming to His temple, Malachi 3, verse 1 to 3. His coming with all His angels, Matthew 25. And His coming enthroned above the living creatures, Ezekiel chapter 1. All three representing the same event as has been shown take place at the beginning of the judgment of the living, the time in which the judicial activities of the heavenly sanctuary extend to the earthly sanctuary, the church. So, the judicial activities in the heavenly sanctuary extend to the earthly sanctuary. When? Only in the judgment of the living. At the beginning of the judgment of the living. But concerning the proceedings, the judgment that pertains to the dead, there was no extension to the earthly sanctuary. Because the work, purely bookwork transaction, and takes place only in the heavenly sanctuary. I would like to read White House Recruiter on page 20. White House Recruiter, page 20. As the cleansing of the sanctuary in behalf of the dead is necessarily purely a book transaction, that is the reason for it is taking place only in the heavenly sanctuary. The same with the statement in tract number 5 on page 109. The investigative judgment of the dead consequently takes place in the heavenly temple only. Tract number 5, page 109. The investigative judgment of the dead consequently takes place in the heavenly temple only, whereas the investigative judgment of the living takes place in the heavenly as well as in the earthly temple. The same with the statement in answerer number 3, page 6. It says, answerer number 3, page 6. It is evident that the investigative judgment harvest of the dead affects only the heavenly sanctuary. This is doubly evident when it is remembered that the dead know not anything, Ecclesiastes chapter 9 verse 5, but are lying unconscious while waiting in their graves for the resurrection day. But when the judgment harvest or the judgment of the living shall begin, then of necessity the sanctuary on earth will be cleansed from the hypocrites, and the sanctuary in heaven from their names in its records. Both sanctuaries are therefore affected. And of course, let us distinctly separate investigative and executive. So let us only on the judgment that pertains to the living, that there is investigative judgment in the heavenly sanctuary, investigative judgment of the living, and also executive judgment of the living in the heavenly sanctuary, as well as on the earth. There is also investigative judgment of the living, as well as executive judgment of the living. But let us focus first to the dead, so that we could comprehend the living, beginning in October 22, 1844. But focus first to the wave ship before we will focus to the wave lobes. And always remember that the wave ship and the wave lobes has a double application, both to the dead and or each to the dead and each to the living. Now let's read this reading in the old symbolic code. 3 symbolic code number 5 and 6, page 13. So let's read. This query is answered in tract number 3. The harvest in the illustration on page 44, of which the barley sheaf of the first fruits is pictured in type and antitype. And I think this is the oldest edition, because in this edition, the chart is not in page 44. It was on page, I think, let me see. It was on page 55, not on page 44. It was on page 55. So the statement in the illustration on page 44, I do not know if that edition are still in existence, because the illustration on this chart, in this reading material today, track number 3, it was on page 55, not on page 44. Now, let's read again, 3 symbolic code 5 and 6, page 13. This query, let's read first the question so that we could understand. On page 12, are the first fruits of the dead also of the living? So, hoping that after our study, you can answer quickly the question. Are the first fruits of the dead also of the living? Or in other words, are the first fruits of the dead is also the first fruits of the living? The question is asking to the type, not to the antitype, because in the antitype, of course, it cannot be. How could it be called the living as the dead? And how can we call the dead as the living? I would like to illustrate again. Jesus Christ was resurrected on April 18, 31 AD. But Jesus Christ was resurrected at 6 a.m. Those that had been resurrected together with Jesus Christ at 6 a.m., they are represented by the first of the first fruits. But those that had been resurrected at 9 a.m. after his resurrection, they are the first fruits. And who are they? We already read, right? In early writings 184. Selected from the first seal. So, what period of time? 4000 BC to 2344 BC. That is the first seal. Then second seal, 2344 BC to the call of Abraham, 1921 BC. Then third seal, 1921 BC to 31 AD. So, they were selected concerning the representative of the living saints, Enoch. Enoch was under the first seal. Elijah is under the third seal. So, Enoch and Elijah. And Moses is under the third seal. And Abel is under the first seal. These are the four representatives. Moses, natural death. Abel, martyr. Elijah, 144,000. Enoch, the great multitude. So the four representatives, Abel, Moses, Elijah, Enoch, were taken first seal and third seal, none on the second seal. But concerning those that had been resurrected with Jesus Christ, they were selected in these three seals. First seal, second, third. So those that had been resurrected at 6 a.m., there are three representatives. First of the first fruits of the first seal, first of the first fruits of the second seal, first of the first fruits of the third seal. Those that had been resurrected at 9 a.m., first fruit of the first seal, first fruit of the second seal, first fruit of the third seal. But all of them are representatives. Remember, brothers and sisters, Enoch, Abel, Moses, and Elijah, no, they were not, they had not been waived because they were represented by the four beasts. They have different work in the judicial proceedings. Now, hoping that I could be able to explain this subject in a very comprehensive manner. And concerning the 24 elders, brothers and sisters, the jury, 12 of them representatives of martyrs, and 12 of them represented by natural death. Natural death. The same with the four beasts, divided also into two. Moses, natural death. Abel, natural death. Abel, martyr. Elijah, 144,000, first fruits. Enoch, the great multitude, which no man could number. Revelation 7, verse 9. Now, I know it is broad subject, but for more information, I would like to enumerate one by one all of them that had been resurrected at the first advent of Jesus Christ. Some of them that had been resurrected is to represent the wave sheep, and some of them that had been resurrected is to represent the wave loaves. Some of them that had been resurrected represented by the first of the first fruits. Some of them that had been resurrected is represented by the first fruit. But some of them are not represented by the first of the first fruits, not represented by the first fruit, not represented by wave sheep, not represented by wave loaves, but they had been resurrected just to serve as a witness in the judicial proceedings in the heavenly sanctuary. The witnesses in the heavenly sanctuary in the such proceedings is composed by seraphims, cherubims, the representatives in the 11 planets, and then the representative of the earth, those that had been resurrected at the first advent of Jesus Christ. So those are the constituents in the heavenly sanctuary in such judicial proceedings that took place in the heavenly sanctuary. And let us try to study closely their exact numbers. So I would like to enumerate now one by one. I would like to read first. I think tract number 3. Before we'll focus our attention to the subject, the wave sheep. It is tract number 15. Tract number 15, where the shepherd's rod, it says, page 14. Tract number 15, page 14. The judicial throne, inspiration makes known, consists of a judge, the Ancient of Days, that is God the Father, of witnesses, the angels, of an advocate, the Lamb, of a jury, the elders, of dependents, the beast, and of the ruler, the Lion of the tribe of Judah. That the four beasts are a symbolical representation of the saints, just as the beasts of Daniel 7 are symbolical of the nations, is made clear by the beast's own statement. But remember, we should not limit our understanding in this statement in tract 15, page 14. Because the statement in 2SR, it says, the entire universe. Let us read again the statement in 2SR. It says, the scripture quoted, that is Revelation chapter 5. The scripture quoted proves that the entire universe is satisfied with the love of God and the righteousness of Christ. We repeat verse 13. And every creature which is in heaven and on the earth and under the earth and such as are in the sea and all that are in them heard I saying, blessing and honor and glory and power be unto him that sitteth upon the throne and unto the Lamb forever and ever. And this statement under the earth can be none other than the unfallen worlds. Now let us read the statement in 2SR. 2SR page 66. The sons of God are the representatives of unfallen worlds, equal to Adam before he sinned, created by the hand of God, and representatives in the same capacity as Adam could have been had he not fallen from his throne by sin. It says, quoting from the word prophecy, the commanders of the angel host, the sons of God, the representatives of the unfallen worlds are assembled. So these unfallen worlds, it points out to the 11 planets. 11 planets. So in this plan of redemption, all of the entire universe, there must be witnesses. And on this earth, the witnesses are those among that had been resurrected at the first advent of Jesus Christ. Now, we will go now to the subject concerning the wave ship, and hoping, brothers and sisters, that as we gradually decipher how the plan of redemption had been laid down, where? In the sanctuary service, 2SR 187. And what is the sanctuary service? Revealed by the three harvest rites, the ceremony of the wave ship, wave lobes, and feast of tabernacles. Those are the sanctuary services in the heavenly sanctuary. How the plan of redemption had been revealed. Revealed unto whom? Only to the 144,000. And what a wonderful blessing. Can you imagine the writers of the Bible, the writers of the Spur Prophecy, the Shepherd's Rod publications? God raised them up to write all the necessary information concerning the plan of redemption, but they themselves, they did not understand all the things that they had written. Therefore, brothers and sisters, there must be a living gratitude that will swell deep down in our hearts with such privilege that had been given by God unto us. You and I, if we will be faithful. And that is why we as Davidian, there is no reason that we will fight against each other. Here in volume 6, page 19 and page 20, it says, mysteries into which angels desire to look, which prophets and kings and righteous men desired to understand. The remnant church will carry end messages from God to the world. The prophets prophesied of these things, and they long to understand that which they foretold, but to them this privilege was not given. They long to see what we see and to hear what we hear, but they could not. That statement, they long to see what we see, in reality, pointing to the 144,000 living saints, the last generation of men. All of them, the prophets who died, brothers and sisters, they provided us all the necessary information concerning the plan of redemption. And that's why, apology and forgive me, but I think this is really the reality. We don't need the writings of those people who rose up after B.T. Hotep died. Their writings will only lead their victims blindfolded to perdition. The Shepherd's Rod publications are sufficient. And that is why the Shepherd's Rod says in 11 Symbolic Code, number 3, page 8 and 9, it says, I would like to read, the message which was met in Judaism in 1844 was the truth Sister White brought, the judgment for the dead. And it was this message which was represented by the oil that was in the lamps when the 10 virgins first went in waiting for the bridegroom to come. The oil that was in the vessels of the 5 wise virgins must represent an additional truth, something other than what was in the lamps. It is this additional truth which is to supplement the 1844 truth and thus supply sufficient light to the time of the coming of the bridegroom. And what must this additional truth be? It must be the truth of the judgment for the living, the last message. Sufficient light. So the Shepherd's Rod publications, the message recorded therein is sufficient. And I think we understand the word sufficient. It is enough. Here in 11 Symbolic Code, number 2, page 11, it says, therefore the devil, 11 Symbolic Code, number 2, page 11, therefore the devil is not going to attack us where he attacked Laodiceans, but he will tell us that we are poor in truth. He will do this in almost in any way. Of course, that is figurative speech to say that you need the writings of so and so, besides the writings of B.T. Hotep, is tantamount to declare that you are poor in truth. You need another writings. That is the deception of the devil. Micah 6:9 is enough, saying, hear ye the rod, indicates that the message in the Shepherd's Rod publications are sufficient to lead God's people down to the kingdom. And any other publications that considered by some Davidian after B.T. Hotep died will lead only their victims blindfolded into perdition, without any doubts. Although those who think that there are still another inspired writings after B.T. Hotep died, that is their own prerogative, brothers and sisters. But truth is truth and sense is sense. Let us have them both. The Shepherd's Rod has a Micah 6:9. There is only a singular fulfillment of that prophecy. According to the Leviticus of Davidian, I would like to read that statement. It says, page 4, Leviticus of Davidian, page 4, and to call attention to the singular fulfillment of Micah's prophecy. Singular. And to call attention to the singular fulfillment of Micah's prophecy. The Lord's voice cried unto the city, and the man of wisdom shall see thy name. Hear ye the rod, and what appointed it? Micah chapter 6, verse 9. And that is our message, exclusively the message within the Shepherd's Rod publications. The only message that we are proclaiming from day to day. Although the writings of Sister White, Alonzo Jones, Wagoner, even writings of William Miller, Joshua Himes, and also Sylvester Bless, being recommended by them, we also use, but very little. And we use the writings in the light of the rod, in the light of the Shepherd's Rod, according to Answerer number 5, page 56. So, hoping, brothers and sisters, we understand little by little, gradually, the plan of redemption. So, on our next episode, we'll begin from 1844. So, I would like to enumerate again, one by one, that those that had been resurrected at the first advent of Jesus Christ are taken from the three generations represented by the first seal, second seal, and third seal. And the resurrection on the first advent of Jesus Christ is divided into two, 3 hours interval. Those that had been resurrected at 6 a.m. and those that had been resurrected at 9 a.m. Those that had been resurrected at 6 a.m., they are the first of the first fruits, but those who was resurrected at 9 a.m., they are the first fruits. But the fact is that every generation, there is a representation of the three classes of saints recorded in Revelation 11, verse 1. Temple, altar, and worshipers. So some of them are first of the first fruits of the temple, and then first fruits of the temple, and then some of them are first of the first fruits of the altar, and some of them are first fruits of the altar, and some of them are first of the first fruits of the worshipers, and then first fruits of the worshipers. But the living saints, 144,000, they themselves are the type of the great multitude. Or those that had been resurrected, there is no type for them to the great multitude, which is the second fruits of the living. Because their type is the 144,000 living saints. Now, I would like to read the statement here. And 2SR 162. 2SR 162. The great multitude of Revelation 7 verse 9, living at the time of the close of provision for the world, shall also never die, of whom the 144,000 were a type. So the statement, it says, of whom the 144,000 were a type. So, hoping that we understand, brothers and sisters, we'll continue the subject on the next episode, and we focus on from October 22, 1844 onwards. In reality, I did not make a very detailed explanation, because if I will make it detailed explanation, more particularly to the first advent of Jesus Christ, we need a vast amount of time. So I just pick up those portions that in absolute importance. Thank you very much. May the good Lord bless you and have a beautiful, wonderful evening.